right. We are here today with Bianca Thomas of Evolve Ventures. Bianca, you're a licensed mental health counselor, coach, a little bit of everything. You're certified in cognitive behavioral therapy. How many years have you been in practice for, if I may ask?
I have been doing one-on-one something for the last 7 years. So I
Mm.
actually started as a fitness coach and I was
Mm.
going to do that. So I got my degree in psychology. So I got my undergrad in psych. And then I met Alan, I met Kevin. That whole story happened, which I'm sure we'll dive into after. And I started thinking about wanting to become a fitness model and a fitness trainer. So I started going down that rabbit hole a little bit, started doing one on one fitness coaching. But then I kept seeing that the same issues that people were dealing with when it came to fitness, this has nothing to do with fitness. This has everything to do with mental health. This has everything to do with you, how you see you, the relationship you have to you, men and women.
Hmm.
And so I was doing more life coaching than I was actual fitness. And I was like, I might as well just go get my degree if even fitness stuff is going to predominantly be mental health and life coaching. So I've been doing one on one coaching for the last, like one on one coaching, therapy, whatever, for
Hmm.
the last 7 years.
It's so funny how all of it really does intertwine, and it's very much like a chicken and egg thing. Is it like you're out of shape, which makes you feel like crap, or you feel like crap, which makes you get out of shape? Like, is it which one is the other? Yeah.
I feel like it depends on the person.
Mm.
Like for me, I it was kind of a mixture of both. I mean, I felt really terrible about myself for the majority of my life, and that made it hard for me to do the things that I needed to do to get fit. But other people, it's like, no, they feel good, life is great, they're just struggling in that arena, and then that makes them feel terrible about themselves. So I don't think it's one or the other. It's like, which for you, what's your flavor of it?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I guess I actually, funny enough, I did personal training myself years and years ago, and it was along the same lines. I was like, I'm going to become a fitness model. I'm going to get jacked. But prior to that, super skinny, super scrawny, didn't like my body, had no confidence. I was like Gumby. I was so lanky.
It was Gumby.
I'm about 6 feet tall. If I didn't have back hairs, I'd probably be 6'1". But I was just lanky and tall, and I just had no confidence. And finally, one day, long story short, I kind of snapped. I said, I'm going. I got P90X, went to GNC, bought a ton of protein supplements, started working out like crazy, and holy crap, everyone's, oh my God, I feel confident, I feel good. Girls are talking to me. This is great. And then, but yeah, it kind of ended up going a little further. Like, I'm going to do fitness mom, I'm going to do personal training. And then eventually you get to this point you realize, like, okay, this is not solving all the problems. There's still something else underneath there. And it inevitably loops back to this point of like coaching into therapy, into realizing it's a lot of it's coming from internally.
Mm.
So in your experience so far, looping this back to the theme of the podcast with the men's topics, what have you been noticing with, I guess, general trends of the men you work with, as far as mental health issues, relationship dynamic issues, wherever you feel like you want to start?
I feel like you wouldn't be surprised about this, but it's mind-blowing for so many people, and so many people don't know this, how many men have significant body image issues
Hmm.
and body dysmorphia and eating disordered behavior and things like that. Just on the topic of fitness of what we're talking about, almost all of the men that I work with, so I actually work with mostly male clients. I would say more than half of the clients that I have of the 60 that I work with are men. And I never, like, in my personal life, I never, before doing all of this, I never really got to see the behind the scenes of most men's lives. That just wasn't my experience growing up. And most people, right? Like most guys don't sit there and talk to people about their deepest fears and their concerns, because that's not masculine and manly. But getting to be in this field and getting to talk to as many men as I do through this work, it's just mind-blowing how many of them are deeply, deeply struggling with body image issues and negative attachments and
Hmm.
deep insecurities and toxic relationship dynamics and like significant core mother and father wounds that you guys just aren't allowed to talk about because then you're not a man. Like I had a client I was seeing this morning, And if anyone saw him on the outside, they'd be like, this guy's a stud. He's super attractive. He's fit. He's in shape. He looks like he could get any girl he wants. He's successful in his career. And he's an absolute mess of a human being. His mom abandoned him when he was 5. He hasn't been able to form a relationship with women since then. His dad abused him. He got very excited going down the path of like drugs and alcohol and partying and status and dominance and all of these things. And nobody would know because he learned how to hide it because he
Mm.
had to keep himself safe.
Hmm.
And that's revered for men. Like, nobody cares what you guys feel as long as you look good and as long as you can put on a good show and it's like big men, masculine, yes, then that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's yeah. Obviously, it's very familiar to me in my life growing up, and then a lot of guys I've talked to over the years myself, and just looking around, seeing the same patterns, same themes, and it's a tough one for guys, just because it's interesting to think about how far back this goes, and I can go on a 10-hour rant I've got like about how many interconnections there are throughout society, history, even the economy, human behavioral, sexual dynamics, relationship dynamics, cultural dynamics, and like how it really runs very deep,
Yeah.
and how we in the modern age we've lost a lot of the mechanisms that in place that would normally help clear these things out in a certain way, in a sense of like we don't have hunting parties anymore, so to speak. It's like caveman hunting parties. Might have been the time when you were away from the village, away from the women and kids, going like, caveman Joe, I'm having a tough time right now. And caveman Bob would be like, all right, let's talk about this while we're walking back, dragging this woolly mammoth with us. And you'd have enough time to like kind of process and digest and be like, okay, I'm feeling this, but clearly you guys still respect me, so I'm good. And now we all live such, socially isolated lives, as far as having that kind of connection with other men in a quiet setting where you can. I remember how many times I've talked to guys nowadays. I'm a massage therapist, and I've done it for just shy of 10 years now. And I'm stepping into the coaching space because how much I've seen people just open up and heal 10 times more effectively when they get their emotions out on the table. But very often, what you see, it's happened just the other day too. I had a guy I was talking to who I had just met him basically like 2 hours prior at a networking meeting. We got lunch together with a couple of the guys, and we were just chatting about something. And he mentioned some comments about how I just have a hard time like doing stuff for me, giving stuff for myself. He's married with kids, like doing stuff for me. And I just casually asked him, like, well, what does that mean to you? Like, why do you feel like having a hard time? And he kind of sat there for like 10 seconds, and you could tell he was like, do I want to let my guard down right now? Do I want to like speak this into existence? Cycling through those things of like, am I going to lose status? Am I going to lose reputation? Is this the right person to tell it to? Like, is something bad going to happen if I do? Can I open up my emotions? Is it going to be, and just within those 10 seconds, you could just see millions of other men doing the exact same thing of just afraid to open up because of fear of losing something or losing status or losing reputation or losing credentials amongst the people, because they're not supposed to, like I said, masculine. They have to have, their shit together. They have to be big, tough guys. And then being told emotion, like, yeah, there's a time and place. You don't want to be losing your shit in the middle of an emergency. You want to have emotional composure to handle it. And then once it's done, then you can lose your shit. But if you go your entire life without ever once allowing yourself to fall apart, to then have people around you help you rebuild yourself, you're just backlogging and compounding just years and years of emotional crap that is just going to blow up in your face, which statistically does most commonly for men, the suicide rate right now, or blows up people around you, blows up your life around you.
Why do you think that guy opened up to you in the way that he did and made that comment? Like, something must have triggered him to then say, oh, I'm having a really hard time taking care of me. Was it like in the conversation that you guys were having, or did it just kind of come out of nowhere?
I forget exactly what drove it into the conversation. It was something because it was me, him, and a couple other guys. One of the guys I know was there knows I'm doing primarily massage therapy, but I'm trying to build up this coaching practice on the side to eventually take it over. And he's like, "Oh yeah, he does this, coaching thing." And I mentioned, blah blah blah. I do the coaching, men's work, trying to help guys, figure out their stuff, emotions, relationship issues, EQ, X, Y, and Z. And I think somewhere in there, somewhere in the conversation, he kind of dropped it. I think people do that more often than people realize. Way more often than people realize. People will drop like fishing lines with bait into conversation, and people just It goes right past them. They don't even notice it was there.
Yeah.
Something simple like, yeah, things are great. I mean, they're not, but, I mean, no, whatever, they're fine. And that little thing was like, that was like a bid for like, is it okay if I talk about it? It's going to talk about it to nobody so far. Will you feel okay? And the person goes, well, they said they're fine, so I guess they're fine. Should we just go? And it's like, no, there was that little nugget of like something in there, and that may be a literal like 10-mile deep well of tears, but
Right.
it only just flashed for a quick second. And having done massage therapy for 10+ years now, like you learn very quickly when people say like they say one thing, they mean another. It's like, how's the pressure? It's totally fine. It's probably not fine. Probably not fine. But even then, you get to the point where I feel like I have like an unofficial therapy license because I got to the point where I can tell very quickly what conversations I should and should not be having. Like I've had 10 times with people I've talked to during a massage, and they're just having conversations about everything, this, that, and anything. They're happy, they're happy, they're happy, and then I'd be like, yeah, something with me and my dad, and they'd be like, they're like, cool, different conversation, going a different direction now, like something over there with your father or your
Oh,
mother
wow.
or whatever it is. But you can pick up very quickly in their tone of voice, their body language. They tensed up when you said something. And when you start to really pick up those little cues, in the case of massage, we're like, okay, maybe you do or don't want to talk about that. But like I said a second ago, a lot of people in everyday conversations, everyday life, they miss those little subtle cues. And when you can pick it up and say like, I'm not forcing you, I'm not going to require you, I'm not going to, just curious, is there something there that you want to talk about? And then
Hmm.
the second part being as emotionally grounded in the moment to say like, nothing you're going to say to me right now is going to throw me off kilter, whatever it is. And I think when you get to that point with people where you can build that kind of capacity within yourself to what is referred to as like negative emotional space, where it's like you can just I have got a big open bucket. You can just fill it up with whatever you want, and I'll take it on for you in the moment, just to help you look at it. That people can really open up and feel more comfortable with that. But a lot of guys don't get that. That's kind of what we're looping around back at too. Yeah.
They don't get it from men or women. There's this notion that's been going around that, like, oh, it's just men versus men, and men can't be strong. Men can't be like vulnerable with men. Men can't be vulnerable with women either. Women smell vulnerability in men. They say that they want it. A lot, not all, but like unhealed, emotionally unintelligent women, if you are
Oof.
vulnerable as a man with an emotionally unintelligent woman, she'll sniff that out and she'll tear you a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Amelia and I know you've had her on the show before. Amelia is my business partner for those who are listening who don't know. And she and I talk about men's issues and psychology and mental health and whatnot. And we did an episode talking about, the episode was called The Manliest Sin in Existence. And it was basically talking about, like, God forbid men open up and share their emotions. And I had opened the podcast with this video that I had seen where this man, I had seen this on one of the platforms. I don't remember which one. And I don't know if this is a real video or not. It kind of seemed staged, but regardless, it was still really a valid video. This man is sitting there and he's looking at this like 6-inch piece of like coil. And he's like just sitting there looking at it. And his wife comes out and she goes, "Are
I know what
you
you're talking
good?"
about. Yep. Yep.
And he's like, "Well, like, I'm really reflecting on this. Like, I've had this piece of coil for however long it was, like 10, 20 years or something since he started his career." And he's reflecting on it and he's saying, I've had this for so long, and the amount of experiences that I've had, and like all of these amazing things that I've gotten to do. And now this coil is about to run out." And he was like about to start crying, just reflecting on his life. And the wife goes, she just completely shuts him down and goes,
Mm-hmm.
you know, "I really thought you were upset about something more serious. Like, you need to just go get back to work." And he's like, "Okay, I'm done," and just storms off. The amount of men that I talk to behind the scenes that are like, "Yeah, my dad was this, and my uncle was that, and my coach, whatever," but like my mom and my sisters, or like the girlfriends that I had, they didn't want to see any vulnerability in me. And anytime I ever did, they would just manipulate it and gaslight it and shame me to no end for having it. And I really believe that that's one of the biggest reasons why men struggle so much with vulnerability and with EQ, and why they end up having severe body issues, and why they're more likely to complete suicide, because you're not allowed to have feelings. The only ones you're allowed to have are angry or fine, And then if you ever do show it, you're cast aside by everybody, not just men, but men and women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a theory about that as far as women go. It's kind of like multi-leveled and complicated, of course, but it
Such
is
is
a
life.
tough balancing. Yeah, it is a tough balancing act for women because you are. I think on like a nature level, we'll say we're a sexually dimorphic species. We are. I'm not going to get into the whole discussion and arguments back and forth about like genders beyond male and female, but simply speaking, XXXY, simple enough. Start with that. The reason we are a sexually dimorphic species is mainly because it was an easy way to out evolve other forms of life that were trying to compete and keep up with us. So like sexual, like genetic diversity tends to win out a lot quicker versus singular one DNA sequence. Think about things like an antibiotic can kill off an entire infection because every single one of those cells from that infection, the bacteria has the exact same DNA. Whereas if you have enough variety, you have but the problem is with that variety, you have to have some kind of driving force that is pushing the variety to keep iterating on itself in a positive way. And I
Mm.
think if you dive into a bit of like more philosophical rather than scientific angles of like things like feminine energy, it is a bit more chaotic, unpredictable, uncertain, but also like creative, and it could be anything. And it tends to be like this natural pushing force of like driving men to want to be better, to want to improve, to want to because otherwise you see what happens with men nowadays. You take away all their incentive to want to do things. They just sit around and drug off to porn and play video games all day and smoke weed. And it's almost like it's a natural function of male nature. Just like, why am I going to work if I don't have to? Well, what do you want? Well, I want, I want to have sex. I want food. I want that. Okay, well, here's the carrot on the stick. It's an attractive woman somewhere in your life or someone who believes is going to try to drive you towards that. But the problem is that if that carrot is like way too far out in front of you, or the carrot itself is beating the shit out of you, you're not going to want the carrot in the first place. And so, yeah, I think there's a healthy angle where women, assuming heterosexual relationships, women do a good job of encouraging men to be better. But when it's never enough, when it's constantly always just short, no matter what you do, it's never enough. So, like the conditional versus unconditional thing, that's where it gets problematic. And couple that with the idea that we have a lot of women nowadays, men too, that have not lived in a family environment where they got to see their fathers or their brothers or uncles having emotionally difficult moments and moving through it.
Mm.
I see those people which is like, why is like, my girlfriend this, my wife, I opened up to her and she left me, she divorced me, she thought I was weak, da, da, da. And you go back in time a little bit, like, well, did you ever see your father cry? Did you ever see your uncle cry, your brothers, your grandfather? Did they ever have emotional? I think I can count on one hand, and I'm sure if my dad ever watches the podcast, 5 times in my life I've seen my dad like really lose his shit, if even that. And I know he had his own. It's generational, the whole boomer generation thing. He's in his
Mm.
70s now. That like you go back far enough, and at some point in time, we just completely cut off men's ability to have space for emotional decompression. And now a lot of women have not experienced it, and so there's a part of maybe the female psychology and even like more philosophical and metaphysical, like this female energy that's like, my job is to push you forward. And if you're falling back, that's not a good sign. Falling back might be you're falling apart emotionally, having a hard time. But on the other side is also that nurturing part where it's like, my job is also to try to like help you rebuild. And if the only thing is to help you move forward and nothing else, and not teach you how to be able to hold some semblance of space in front of the men. And for many men, it might not even be like, I don't need you to solve the problems. I just need you to just like sit next to me while my body digests this sadness or this grief or whatever it is. Because I'll talk to my buddies about, I lost my job. I'll talk to my buddies about finding work. I've got connections over there. I've got other people elsewhere. But for right now, if you could just like be with me in this moment, this would be really helpful. If you've never experienced it, your default reaction is going to be disgust, fear, confusion, kind of like just it's uncertainty. It's uncertainty in a nutshell, and it gets translated into, this is not good. I don't like this. It's making me feel bad. This needs to stop. And if I can't get it to stop, I'm gonna go walk away from it or just attack it or demonize it. That's theory number one.
No, I don't disagree with you. I think that one of the core driving issues is this intense lack of emotional intelligence and
Mm-hmm.
emotional availability in men and women. I mean, women have been emotionally intelligent for much longer than men because we've been allowed to. And
Mm-hmm.
because our role has been in the past, the function that we played and the roles that we were predominantly serving were mother, nurturer, caretaker. We got really good at it. So now, when we're evolving into a much more dynamic space where women are thankfully allowed to work, they're allowed to be and do more than just mother, caretaker, wife, elder, and then they die. We're allowed to do more, we're allowed to be more, we're allowed to have more. And in that evolution, we're not all collectively evolving in that direction. And what I mean by that is women want men to be better and men want women to be better, but so few people are actually willing to do the work to make themselves better first. So you take a woman who now is a little bit more empowered, she's able to work, she can pay her own bills, she can do all of this stuff, whatever. Who's to say that just because she does that, she's actually working on herself and is able to accept a healthy, vulnerable man? That she's done that work, whatever it is, that's like, no, 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 no. A man just still needs to be a provider. I can still do these things for me now, but you, no, 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 no. You still need to be provider.
Mm-hmm.
Don't show emotion. I make my own money, but like, mm, ego. Keep that. And so few people are doing the work to really allow for the nuances of change to happen from both genders. So, like, there's still men who are very fearful of women becoming empowered. I actually had a client and he's the type of person that women would be like, I would never want him around because he has a lot of trauma. He never dealt with it. So it came out as like, I'm going to sleep with escorts. I'm never going to actually allow a woman into my life. Women are something I can buy with money.
Mm-hmm.
So he and I were having a session the other day and he literally said like, why would I ever open up to a woman? Why would I ever allow a woman into my life and allow her to do things for me? Like, if a woman is empowered, she's a man. And I was like, whoa, that's a belief. So there's a lot of men. I mean, again, that's the extreme, but like, there's on that end. And then there's the opposite other end where men are like, well, if a woman wants to do that, let her do everything. I'm not going to do it. And the same thing for women. We're not developing into the true essence of what it means to be empowered from both genders, meaning we are both mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically, financially, socially empowered and intelligent and capable. And I will still embody my feminine energy and you still embody your masculine energy, and we're going to grow in that together.
Mm.
It's like these just power dynamics are still playing out in these really maladaptive and harmful ways. And men are reverting to what they know, and women are reverting to what they know as a byproduct.
What specifically would you say is what they know for each respective gender?
The traditional cultural norms and cultural expectations, like men are emotionally distant and cut off, they're going to focus on work and friends and porn and sex, and women are going to focus more on their appearances and social dynamics, and they might focus on their career, but it's more so in these other potentially disempowering ways, taking on more traditional roles.
It's interesting. There's so many books I've read around this, and it's interesting because there is a component of it that is, like I said before, about the idea of the caveman walking back with his cave bros on the hunt. There were certain, I think what's strange about the world today is that there are certain natural, unintended or unintended consequences of how society evolved in order to survive that kind of forced certain dynamics to play out. And at least in the context of, like you said before, like women not being able to work and whatnot, was interesting to think about that is that it was less about women not being able to work and more about the contributions of women's to society was not something measurable by like GDP and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. I've ever heard referred to as like a shadow economy. Whereas like women were doing a lot behind the scenes, but they weren't maybe the ones in the marketplace or the ones making like political decisions or big things like that. And so there was an element of they were doing it. And people, I heard a story about like men getting annoyed, like, why are women in the workforce? Like they've always been in the work in some sense. There's always been something going on. It's just that you didn't see it outright in terms of like global GDP increase because women were sewing clothes and the houses wouldn't have sewing machines yet. Or GDP increased because we had like they were taking care of their kids and actually making them into functioning, healthy adults that can coexist in society. That's not really easily measurable things to do. And nowadays, yeah, we've got this point where people don't have as much. It's like way back in the day, you didn't have the choice to do it because like life itself was so dangerous for both genders. Essentially, we had to work together by trying to lean into our strengths and whatnot. And nowadays, I think people are having a hard time finding that balancing act of like you don't like it's not that you have to be masculine or feminine to survive. Now you get to choose to be. But in the option of choosing to be, it sometimes it can be like even the advent of like AI relationships. It's like I can choose to find an actual real life human female partner, or maybe in 10 years from now, I could just go on ChatGPT and be like, cook up a girlfriend for me, because I don't feel like dealing with all the hassles that I know, like of like having to learn how to be that person. And now we're basically giving some people, men and women, the option to kind of step out of those roles into like easier avenues.
Why would a man risk opening his heart when he's had every experience under the sun telling him that you will be ostracized
Mm-hmm.
and cut down and ridiculed for doing so? And I don't say that as an excuse of, oh, well, then just don't do it. But what I'm saying is, okay, like that client that I had, his
Mm-hmm.
mother abandoned him from a very young age. He was in and out of the foster care system. He had a lot of abuse and a lot of harm happen. And then he was introduced to this world where he was seeing that, oh my God, I don't have to respect women. I can get the most beautiful women in the world if I just have money.
Mm-hmm.
And they want my money. They don't want me. They don't care about me. If I ever try to open up to them, I could actually get harmed because in this world, if I'm seen as weak, she's going to go tell her friends and X, Y, and Z. They're going to tell the men in their life, and then something might happen to me. So when you go through a circumstance like that, and again, that's a pretty significant extreme, but you go through a circumstance like that and you sincerely learn, oh my God, if I'm vulnerable, I have the risk of getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do it? Not unless you have a significant enough reason to. And there's this notion going around now that like women shouldn't have to fix men. True, right?
Yeah.
It's not your job to fix men, but it is your job as a collective society to give men and women a feeling of safety so that they can do it on their own, that they have places and communities and resources and support systems and information available where it's going to be safe enough to do so and that nothing bad's going to happen to them if they do.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows men to actually be healthy masculine and women to be healthy feminine and vice versa in the ways that we're supposed to be. But when we're not having this and when no one's having this, of course, women are going to do the things that they're doing to keep themselves safe because men have been very abusive and harmful for a very long period of time. And men are just going to keep doing that because it's benefited them for so long.
Keep doing what specifically?
Just a lot of the things that, just a lot of the stereotypical experiences of men, like, I'm not going to commit to a woman. I'm going
Mm.
to engage in, dating multiple women at the same time and focusing on power and dominance and status and mistreating people. And again, that's not, it's a pretty extreme end of the spectrum, but
Mm-hmm.
like somewhere along the spectrum, why would a man change if he has no reason to, if he doesn't have any valid enough reasons and or support to where nothing bad's going to happen to do it? And for women.
There's a really, I don't, we can go, I'd be happy to go down this rabbit hole if you'd like. There's a really interesting idea behind that that kind of ties into certain genetic expressions of people within on the population level that there was a book, I forget, it was Luann Brizendine, is the female brain and the male brain, two different books. And talking about this species of, I think it was mole or vole, one of those rats. And they were talking about these two different species, two different variations of the same species of this underground rat. And one particular version of it, they are monogamous as hell. They're like they pair up. They literally like have nonstop sex for like 24 hours straight, and they are just pair bonded for life. And then there's another version of it that they are like polygamous as hell. They have like multiple partners all over the place. And what they were able to isolate was that there was one particular gene sequence that was like longer in the monogamous ones than it was in the polygamous ones. And when they took it out of the monogamous ones and put it into a polygamous variant, it became monogamous as a result.
That's very
And
interesting.
there was a joke that was like the only good thing about as long in a man is that monogamous one gene. But the idea being we may have this ties into this idea of like structures around culture, and especially things like religion, for example, that religion may have evolved out of a necessity to try to create some kind of constraints around human behavior, both male and female behavior, because prior to like most religions, we were collected tribes. We didn't know what paternity was. You go back far enough, a lot of tribes were just like, everyone's kids are everyone. And then one day some dude figured out, oh crap, that kid's not mine. I'm not going to help that kid. And then paternity awareness became a whole thing. And then, seeking out virgins and whatnot, because it was the only way we can really prove it prior to DNA testing today. And even the things like you mentioned, the foster care system with that client you had, the foster care system, I think, is well over 400 or 500 years old. It's been an ongoing problem for a long fucking time, getting parents to just like take care of your goddamn kids and stop sleeping with the neighbor's wife, please. It's like 2 of the 10 commandments.
Yeah.
And that it potentially within the last 50 or so years, with things like modern birth control, both condoms and hormonal birth control and whatnot, it may have open the door to that variant of men who are just naturally genetically polygamous as hell to just go nuts. And that you may have you might start that plus detaching and tearing down a lot of religious underlying fabric to a lot of society may be leading to that, plus hookup culture and dating apps and all these different things you can look at. Technology is kind of like taking the constraints off of subconscious human behavior. That it's
Yeah.
like even the most happily married man will look at a hot woman outside of his marriage once in a while and have some thoughts he didn't really ask for. But ideally, there's enough of dedication to his family and happiness in his and the community structure and whatnot. But when you start to take away those things, certain aspects of human behavior starts to come to the surface, start to just express itself more and more and more. And so we're entering a time now where it's like if you want to be monogamous with one person and take care of your kids, you have to voluntarily create circumstances that do not carry on a stick the worst parts of yourself. Because back in the day, society basically forced it on you. But now you have to do it yourself to start creating these things. Looping back to what you said about the guy, like, why would he go through all that? I guess the question behind that question would be like, well, what led to those circumstances happening in the first place? And this becomes again like a chicken and egg question. This podcast is turning from like men's issues into like deep philosophy. But yeah, you start drilling down far enough and deep enough, you start to realize, like, I grew up very, I wouldn't say anti-religious, but I was just atheist as fuck. And now it's like a bit more agnostic. Like, okay, I'm starting to see how when you learn about science and hormonal psychology and neurology and human behavior, you realize like, oh, some things in certain religions actually kind of made some sense because it constrained the worst parts of ourselves from just going completely unchecked.
Because we
Not
didn't
all
have
of it.
psychology back then.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we needed religion.
Exactly, but even things like religion and spirituality tend to figure out problems, the things that science later on understands the deeper nature of. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, even again, in the question of that guy we're talking about, it's just like he grew up in single parent household, and then he was in a foster care system, and then digging down deeper and saying, well, why does a foster care system exist? Because the men, they have a lot of instances of men who just tend to like sleep and then leave. Well, why is that happening? Because of societal issues. Well, why is that happening? Because and then just the polygamous versus the monogamous genetically inclined guys and the moles going at it and whatnot. And it ends up going down like a deep rabbit hole to figure out where is the ultimate source of the problem. Complex.
These are deeply rooted systemic issues, and how they apply today is so few people are actually working past their biology. I mean, from a biological standpoint, from an evolutionary psychology standpoint, men did sleep with multiple women because it increased their odds of having children.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in that time and age anymore.
We're
So,
not,
like,
but our minds still think we are.
Our
Our
minds think we
subconscious
are, but
thing.
yes, but it's up to us to navigate, and I'm sure you agree with this.
Yeah.
It's up to us to work through that. And when you are not being given the conditions externally and internally to work through that, why would you? You're not going to, because there's
Hmm.
no reason to. That's why I love getting to work with male clients. It's like so many of them, it's so funny. They're like, I would never talk to a man about this. It's like, yeah, but most of your issues are with men. Like, you don't want to talk to a man, but we need more men talking to each other about this because,
Yeah.
yeah, behind the scenes, you'll talk to me about this. But if we were out in public, you would never talk like you're talking to me. So it's deeply rooted issues. But one of the things that I love talking about with these men is like actually understanding why are you doing what you're doing,
Hmm.
and what could your life mean, and who do you want to be, and what are your emotions, because yes, you have them too. And how do you use that as a source of empowerment rather than something that is a crutch and a sign of weakness, or not a crutch but like a hindrance and a sign of weakness. And when you see these men really go through this experience of getting to understand who they are at a deeper level and their system of parts, to use internal family systems
Yeah.
language, and their development and how that impacted them, and what being a man means to them,
Hmm.
it's like you just get to see them evolve in this really beautiful way. And they get to see that the world is so much bigger than this like narrow lens they've been seeing it through.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're touching on there is a bit more autonomy. And a lot of people, a lot of men and women, they grow up with a strong sense of not feeling like they have choice,
Mm.
which is an interesting. Here we're going down a rabbit hole again. Interesting concept. I just came across this podcast the other day. It was talking about it was that video. It was talking about like I think it was alluding to the idea that the growth mindset may have first initiated really for his society around the time of Joan of Arc, and maybe in other cultures at different times too. But prior to that, most of society, most people just grew up as like, oh, listen, if you're poor, it's because God wants you to be poor. So if you're being poor, you're doing a great job of what God wants you to be. Everyone's like, cool, all right, then I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. This is awesome. I'm doing my job. Problem solved. Life is easy. All I got to do is wake up tomorrow and be poor. I'm fucking good with that. Whatever. Because like there was no moving up to the up and into the hierarchies. It's like you need to be born into it. And then Joan of
Or
Arc
you
came
rely on
along.
the church and you continue empowering the church even more and giving them more resources to eventually be able to help, even though they didn't.
Yeah, yeah. Even things like literacy was like very like forbidden in certain parts because like they can read, they're going to get smart and they're going to get doing stuff. But at some point, I think Joan of Arc, among other things, came along and said, actually, you could literally be born into poverty and still conquer like a nation. And then it opened up the idea of a growth mindset. But with that, it opened up the possibility of you could be more, but if you're not doing more, there must be something wrong with you, or you're not where you should be. There must be something wrong with you. And I think people, yeah, we grow up with a certain sense of not having a strong sense of agency, of autonomy, of recognizing there is a capacity through therapy and coaching and even like meditation to separate yourself from your impulses, the point that you can observe your own impulses, even if you feel them, and still make a decision of what you want to do, regardless of them, and then how that can cascade along into your life into creating an outcome that you actually want. And if enough people all collectively do that together, we start moving society in the direction that we want to, despite the fact that even in like yeah, I'm sure even in like the most super duper fundamentalist, religious, conservative societies, there's still people sleeping around behind the scenes and they shouldn't be. But the statistics are dramatically lower than other places where all the rules were just taken and thrown out the window. And we turn into like a modern day Sodom and Gomorrah or something crazy like that.
Mm. You would never think that men don't have autonomy because we see that the way that the world works, and men are usually the ones in power and they get to rule the world basically. And while that is true, and while there have been for the majority of the world and what's documented and what's been like allowed to be documented is
Mm-hmm.
men are rulers. So you would never hear that and think, huh, yeah, men don't have autonomy. But if you actually think about it, it makes perfect sense. When men are put in this very narrow lane of hunter, protector, fighter, father, uh, nurturer, not nurturer, I'm sorry, provider, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you're fit in this very narrow mold of who you have to be. And if you ever want to go outside of that, you're in deep shit, for lack of a better phrase. Men aren't allowed to want to explore. So it's like if you're not football, basketball, whatever, if you're not, intelligent and charming and this and that, then you're not a man. So it's like if a man wants to go do something like Dungeons and Dragons, let's say, or if they'd rather do ballet or if they'd rather do something else, it's like, what are you doing? No, 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 no. That's not what men do.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're not gay, because then you'd assume, oh, they must be gay if they want to do that. Or they have different interests and they're allowed to have different interests. So men are very much put into this micro little box. And it's like, this is who you have to be. Don't get out of this. And I believe that that's why men struggle so much with their identity and not falling down that very narrow path that so many men fall under, because you're not allowed to, from men or from women. And
Mm-hmm.
then these cycles just perpetuate. Men harm women, women harm men, and it's just this destructive cycle that repeats over and over again.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite facts is the fact that Vin Diesel loves Dungeons and Dragons.
That's
I don't know
so
if you ever knew
funny.
that. But it's one of my personal recurring themes in life. Is I grew up, I was super insecure, but I was also very big into gaming and whatnot, nerdy sci-fi thing. I even see still to this day. I still play a lot of games with friends. Like I'm fascinated. I have friends I play. I'm 36 and I still play Pokemon cards sometimes. But I'm also like had a career and I've done a job and I've also gotten to really good physical shape and I'm confident and be able to balance those two things and say like, yeah, I can be like a confident, masculine, you know, attractive presence and still be nerdy as fuck and do D&D and play Pokemon, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And there's a good, I think there's a quote, there's like a Roman or Greek quote is like, never give a sword to a man that cannot dance. And the
Mm,
idea was as like a you want a man that has the capacity to like do dangerous things and still know how to touch like get in touch with his feminine side and be like like well you want a warrior in a garden, not a gardener in a war. So teaching men that you should be strong, you should be capable, you should be able to, you should also be able to like just enjoy fine art and like play with kids and do cute and cuddly things. And if you're into drawing, painting, whatever, just go do whatever you want to do. But when the time comes, we ask it like if some bad person or bad things knocking on the door, just be ready to take care of it. And I think that's where we're getting to the point where it's like your only job is to be protector, nothing
right,
else. And that's where the
right.
problem comes.
Men and women. I
Yeah.
mean, Emilia and I very much, we don't fit the normal role of a woman. Like we met doing Muay Thai. She beat the ever loving shit out of me and we became best friends after that. But like you also look at us externally and we are still very feminine. We're
Oh yeah.
very like empowered and confident and like dominant and capable, but we also have that feminine energy and that nurturance that I sincerely believe a woman should have. You have the whole package, for lack of a better phrase. But like, and I know that sounds arrogant, but it's just we've done a lot of work on ourselves, and this is what we help other women and also men do too. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you get to define what it means to be a man. Now, from a biological and a evolutionary psychology standpoint, yes, there are certain things that differentiate men and women, and there's more like male masculine traits and there's female masculine traits and there's female feminine traits and male feminine traits. The thing is, find what works for you.
Yeah.
Find that healthy aligned balance and synergy and integration for you, and give your like allow yourself to do that so you can give the person sitting in front of you permission to do that as well. Because if I'm deeply insecure about my own femininity and I'm puffing up because I'm afraid, then the man sitting in front of me is going to detect that. He's going to be like, oh my God, I can't be vulnerable with this girl. I'm going to puff up too. And then I'm going to look like a douchebag. And then the cycle perpetuates, or vice versa, whatever. So the more that we as humans in general, men and women, can allow ourselves to become emotionally intelligent, develop healthy vulnerability, develop confidence and competence and empowerment, and all of these really important facets of what it means to be a human, then I know this sounds Pollyanna, but we really all can help each other evolve into this space that is deeply capable and possible.
It's funny you mentioned the Muay Thai thing. I remember back in college, I had a girl that I was interested in, and I was trying to get to like learn about her from other people I knew. And someone said something like, "Yeah, she played. She was petite. She's like she was petite. She was girly. She was cute. And she plays rugby. And like I think she was out of the team because she checked somebody so hard she broke her own collarbone."
Oh,
And I was
jeez.
like, "I think I'm in love. Oh my god." And it's not because like, oh, she's masculine, but it's more like she can hold her own if she needs to.
Right.
But then also like maybe in privacy of their own company, she enjoys this is I think what most men are looking for, and women too. It's like hold my own if I need to in the space that I need to in the ways I need to. But when the time comes, we're together. We fall into the dynamics that we're happiest with. I've heard this a lot with. I had a guy I interviewed a while back. Early on when I started doing it, it was very like red pill heavy. But he made a point about how he had a friend who was this guy who just made like average money, and he was dating this woman who was like a multi millionaire. And when she was at work, she was doing all her work stuff. But when they were together, he just like called all the shots, and she loved it. It was just like when we were together, I just don't want to be in charge. I want you to be in charge because I'm in charge at work. I know how to balance, and they're happy as shit together. And you might think, look, well, she's making all the money, like, but their relationship and their energy works in the way that they want to, and they've managed to mesh it together, and they know how to turn it on and off depending on where they are.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
It really is. That's wonderful. I guarantee they're both highly emotionally intelligent.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's a matter of just acknowledging that those parts of yourself that, like I said, IFS thing again, parts of yourself that come out during certain circumstances, certain places, under certain whatever it may be, that operate best depending on what calls for in the moment. And then who you are. You might be a more masculine woman, a more feminine man, and then just like find your complementary opposite and just lean into it confidently and figure out what works in your relationship and what doesn't work. What's interesting here is also this idea. I think we're seeing this a lot nowadays. People don't. We mentioned earlier about the problem with men opening up, women leaving, or getting disgusted by the emotion. It's like stated versus revealed preferences, and I think within that is a tough one with getting people to acknowledge. Like I myself, I think I err a little more feminine than most men do. I'm interested in trying like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, Muay Thai, shit like that. But I'm also probably not the first guy you call when like terrorists are knocking at the door. I've got other friends who do that kind of stuff. Um, like massage therapy is mostly female dominated. And you can go into the coaching space. If I hadn't done massage, I probably would have gone to school for like a therapist licensure, but mostly female. That mostly because there is a certain element that just most women might naturally lean towards being able to sit in a room and listen to someone where most men not as much. They can, but if you ask them what would you rather be doing, most guys are like I want to just go build something, be outside, maybe punch a dude in the face, whatever it may be. I feel like doing. But the stated versus revealed preferences thing, this idea of, oh, I want a man to open up to me, or I want a woman who does this, and then all of a sudden something completely opposite comes along. You're like, ooh, that stirred me in ways I wasn't. I thought I wanted this, but it actually turns out this. And then getting people to recognize that it takes time to really get to know yourself, and then beyond that, be okay with who you are, and then confidently walk into the world with it.
Very few people actually take the time to really get to know themselves enough to understand their real preferences versus the story that they're telling themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Alan and Amelia had talked about this on the show, but there's three layers of truth that we all are embodying. There's the story that we want the outside world to know about who we are. There's the story that we're telling ourselves, which is the second rung. And then there's the innermost layer of who I actually am, that I'm afraid even to myself to tell myself. Most people never get past the third layer. Most people don't have the capacity, and they're scared shitless of ever actually going down to the next layer and then down to the innermost layer, because what does it mean if I actually get that deep within myself?
Mm.
Am I going to like what I see? Am I going to be okay with it? Can I handle this? Am I going to be able to cope with whatever comes up? And even more than that, do I actually have the capacity to change this? And I don't believe most people do, or they don't believe that they do, and they're terrified of having to do the work to actually change and navigate that, because it's going to take way longer than you think. It's going to be way more painful than you think, but it is going to happen if you do the work.
Hmm.
So people are living on these tertiary truths of, no, I know who I am. I like this and I want that. But then when the reality comes to face you, it bites you in the ass because you're like, oh, no, I didn't want that. I didn't want that at all. But I'm not going to acknowledge it. So we're just going to have the same cycle repeat itself over and over again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a tough one. And I think within that too is also the question of social media does a terrible job of this, of try
Social media is a
unintentionally.
massive shit show.
Oh yeah, giga massive shit show. It's problematic because it gives you the false impression of today's day and age is interesting because we have so much opportunity to do whatever you want to do. Back in the day, it's like you're a man, cool, you're gonna go hunting now. That's all you're gonna do. That's all you can. Or farming comes along, you're a farmer now. 99% of people were farmers. Nowadays, it's like, oh, you can be anything from a psychologist to a neurologist to a doctor to an engineer to a lawyer to a social worker to a teacher to just like there's a billion different things you could be. But in the process of trying to figure out what is your personality geared towards, what does the world need most, and even then within what you pick, is it going to be something that you're going to be at least respected for doing and valued for doing, and things like social media. It takes like 10 different men or women and doing 10 different things and saying I should be doing all 10 of those at the same time, and if I'm not, then I'm not a good person. I'm not doing enough. I'm not like hustling enough. I'm not doing whatever I'm doing enough. And then you end up like just compounding this feeling of shame that just you didn't really ask for. It's like your subconscious basically doing what we've evolved to do is just kind of do soft comparisons to the people around us and say, are we on the right track of doing something of value to contribute to the tribe around us? But the tribe is no longer 50 to 100 people. Now it's 50 million people. All it's a different person every single day, every 5 seconds of what the algorithm wants to show you.
But the algorithm is also only showing you the like
Mm-hmm.
minor percentages of people who have the things that everybody believes that they should be having, even if it's fake. The amount of photos that are AI generated, the
Oh
amount
my
of
God.
people
No.
that paid to go to Harvard to pay for a lecture room and take photos of them looking like they're giving a speech when they're really not, or like all of the just like BS content that you're seeing. It's like you're seeing the 0.001% and it's blowing it up, making it seem like that's everybody. So then you feel like you're behind or you're missing something. And we all cognitively know this, but we're still falling into the trap because we're not doing that work on ourselves to understand what is the stated versus the real thing that I'm actually wanting, and who
Mm.
actually am I, and what actually is right for me. And is having a Bugatti or six pack abs or my lips stuffed out from here to Kansas actually going to make my life better? The answer is almost always no. But we're not doing that inner work, men or women, to get to the point where we can realize that. We're just being told, hey, this is what you're supposed to want. And we're going to show you all of this content to push that narrative so you believe it, so you do the same thing.
Yeah, and it's tough though. I wonder how deep can you go before you're just hitting systems that operate independent of your decision to actually have them activate. Like a simple example of this was like yesterday I went to the gym with a buddy of mine, and after we left, he said something like, "When did all like the bad bitches come out of hiding, dear God?" But it was just kind of it was because it was just like tons of women because we I live down south on the southeast coast near Georgia, in the United States. And more as a guy nowadays, you see a lot of women walking around in like stupidly tight Lululemon booty short everything. And like I'm part of me is like, yeah, I like what I'm seeing. Another part of me is just like, but I also want to just focus on the workout. And also part of me is just like this feeling. But when you have guys that will get to a point where you say like, oh, I'm loyal and respectful to my partner, or whatever it is, but this is just this stimulus is constantly in my face all the time. That is one example of several that goes on where you say like, how much of it is me being me, and how much of it is just old biological evolutionary systems in my head that are just naturally designed to fire given certain circumstances. Like if I'm hungry enough, I'm going to start stealing food, even though it's not a good thing to do. But like that
Hmm.
system's job is to push me in that direction to keep me alive or to keep me thriving, whatever it may be.
We need to make sure that we're setting up the external and internal conditions to make sure that we can navigate those challenges as they come.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, if you see a hot girl and she has a beautiful figure, of course you're going to look. Women look too. It's human nature. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my God, beautiful, amazing. But what do you choose to do after that? Because that is a choice. And if you're like, well, it's just my biology, you can work through that. It's your biology. That didn't mean you had to go up to her and harass her. That didn't mean
Well,
you
the
had to
harassing
go
thing, no.
do what you did, you know?
Absolutely. I'm talking more along the lines of to what degree are we inadvertently dedicating excess mental energy to fighting systems that will just fire off no matter what we do? That's I think what's kind of what social media is doing. It's like no amount of like I could be the most Zen Buddhist monk in the world and just at peace with myself. And if I throw him enough social media, eventually he's going to start hating himself. Just like, and just the idea of certain parts of human psychology and biology that just like they're beyond our ability to stop them from firing. And then if you create conditions where it's firing all the friggin' time, all day, every day. And again, the gym thing is one example of it. Social media is a perfect example of like every day I hop on social media and I'm constantly reminded by people who are doing way better than I am. And there are parts of my brain that are designed to measure and keep track of my sense of social status amongst people around me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's always coming up short 24/7, no matter what I do. And that it's almost like it's just grinding. It's like a friction is grinding you down. No matter how hard you try, you can never get to a point where you're confident with yourself, unless you just voluntarily just decide to turn off social media completely. But it's interesting how there's certain parts of society where we're getting to a point where we're figuring out certain parts of our behavior and parts of human psychology that we're like, oh, we can create a system that gets this thing, this alarm system, to go off all the time. Junk food's a perfect example of this. It's like we're training kids from a young age, just like, oh, shiny bright colors and junk food, it feels great, it tastes good. And that urge for junk food, like I eat 99% very healthy, and last night I just went nuts at a friend's house for a party we had, and I regret it tremendously. But it's like I preach it to everyone: don't eat junk food, don't eat it. And last night I was like, screw it, Doritos are delicious. But it's hitting a part of my psychology, my biology, that is beyond my ability to just naturally turn off. But I have to be cognizant of where I'm going in the world today, or I'm walking. Yeah.
This is why our ability to have thinking is so critical and what has made us the apex predator and the apex just species in
Mm-hmm.
general. We have conscious thought. We have a prefrontal cortex that allows us to think. And you can use our thinking, and CBT really talks about this. We can use our thinking to navigate our emotions and to create and modulate and work through emotions and behaviors. So, yeah, as a woman, if I see, I don't know, if I see a baby crying, my biology is going to say, go save that baby, go take care of it, go do whatever. It is a preset biological thing. But I also have conscious thought, and I'm like, okay, well, the mother is right there.
Mm.
And the mother probably doesn't want me to come up and do something, or whatever. That was a small example, but like, yes, there are these biological things that are happening, and yes, there's signals all the time. And it is our job as the person walking through this world to learn how to understand the signals that are coming our way and to have enough self control to be able to navigate them. And
Mm.
if you're not doing that, again, this might sound kind of harsh. And I used to be somebody like that, and I work with people like that all the time. It is an excuse. Is it hard? 100%. Are you always going to be perfect? No. But where's the trend line going? Is it
Mm.
getting better? Or are you always just using the biology excuse? Well, I just couldn't help myself. You could. You chose not to work on it. You chose to just cave in rather than develop a sense of willpower to not go do it.
Yeah, I guess it's a measure of it's almost like being an alcoholic and choosing to live in a dry county. The idea of just creating like yeah, what we talk with men, looping back to men again. It's like like you might have social media, but you have to get rid of all of thirst traps because they're just going to be there. It's just no matter what you do, you have to consciously choose to not look at pornography. You have to consciously choose to start acknowledging certain parts of human behavior, especially when it comes to like mating and dating, where it's like this, no matter what you do, it's just there are certain things that are good to work on. It's good to just be in physical shape. You don't need a six pack, but you should at least be like able to go up a flight of stairs without losing your breath, things
Mm-hmm.
like that, whatever it may be. And acknowledging that on a certain level, it's easy to say like, oh, girl, one of my favorite quotes, like, oh, girls only like, Chad. They're only looking for Chad. And I was like, I've had plenty of fat friends in my life that have no problem with women. Because you can tell as you're right there, it's one part of a grander system of things that you can work on. Like what is a compensatory attraction mechanisms? Yeah.
Girls want to sleep with Chad. Girls don't marry Chad.
This comes back to like the monkey world. Like what impulses are we collect? This is getting into like more like a societal discussion, but like what kind of culture are we encouraging in the direction of when like things like social media encourage men to want to post shirtless six-pack abs, and then even then there's this point of how if it gets encouraged enough on a collective small level, it starts to propagate into a bigger society. And this ties back to this whole point about the sexual revolution and like opening up the doors to letting people through. And in a way it may have just been like we may be creating a society where we're overly empowering Chad.
It's operant conditioning. Think of like Pavlov's dogs. It's
Mm-hmm.
operant conditioning. Oh, this behavior gets me rewarded. Keep doing this behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So when we stop rewarding those behaviors and we reward other ones, eventually they will go down that path.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, and it's tough then to convince people to basically say like the life that you want is not always going to be in congruence with what your impulses are telling you. It's very difficult to do for a lot of people. Yeah.
It is, but it's not impossible. That's why therapy and coaching are so important. Like, you can't do it on your own, and that's okay. And there's people who can help you, people who are credible, people who have done it themselves, who, work day in and day out helping people to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you tear your ACL, you're not like, yeah, I'm going to fix this on my own. Please don't do that. Go to a physical therapist. Go get massage therapy. Go figure out like what were the weaknesses that were happening within my body that got me to this point. But when it comes to the mental and the social world, people are like, I don't need somebody. Really? Who taught you to do differently? Your parents were supposed to. They clearly didn't because they didn't know. So we're just supposed to inherently know how to do these things because everybody's pretending that they know. And behind the scenes, everybody's full of shit and hates themselves. Like, so this is where therapy and coaching and things like that are so vital because you can change. Yes, it's hard. It's probably going to take a while, and the time is going to pass anyways. So you could either do it now and you'll get the rewards later, or you suffer that much longer and then it's that much harder by the time you go to try to do it.
It's funny because I've had the conversation behind closed doors with massage therapy so many times, and a lot of what kind of pushed me in the direction of the men's coaching was funny was I had a lot of women that I would speak to. One thing I remember hearing several times was like, "How is my husband this old and he still acts this way?" And as though like the universe just goes like, "Oh, you're 25. Here's the software update. You're going to just get downloaded into your head to now act like a mature 25-year-old." Realizing that a lot of it is just trained and taught into the people, and it's not an age thing at all. I've had people, I'm sure you've seen this yourself, like plenty of people who are like well into their 50s, 60s, and 70s are still acting like teenagers. Like it does just because age comes along doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be growing up. So surrounding yourself by the right people, finding the right people, voluntarily putting yourself in the circumstances to be surrounded by and influenced by the kind of people you want to be more like and learn from and being in presence of, especially for this whole topic of men, finding proper role models, or in like some cases, just asking yourself, what is the man that I want to become? And then reverse engineering, what do I have to do to get myself in that direction? And then I can become the role model that I want to see myself become to then influence other men or women.
Mm. I think it's hard for men to reverse engineer it when they have no idea what it looks like, but you can ask, like, what is the next right thing I would love to do? So I'm in this situation. What I typically would do is this. Okay, what other options do I have available to me? Again, back to the prefrontal cortex. We have
Mm-hmm.
conscious thought. Okay, I'm feeling all of these sensations in my body. I know that in the past, this is what I would have done. What else could I do? What other options are available to me? And then choose something else. And then if you do that enough times, you actually start developing real self efficacy and self belief
Mm-hmm.
because you're starting to see, oh, I'm capable of deciding on a behavior, and I'm also capable of executing on that behavior and getting an intended outcome. Not because society is telling me that that's what's right, but because I now have enough self awareness within me to know what's right for me and what isn't. And then you do that and you keep doing that and you keep doing that. And then eventually you can start reverse engineering because you have enough data to support, okay, here's how I got from A to like J. And here's all the steps. So I have enough capabilities and self belief and confidence to know that I got myself from here to here and I know those steps. If I wanted to get to M, what do I think I would have to do? And then you can actually reverse engineer it because you have enough in your back pocket to know, like, oh, yeah, I can do this. All right, cool.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting about that point you made about building a stack of evidence? Fantastic, absolutely should. The other side of that coin that I've seen myself and other people too is recognizing that sometimes there are anchors, usually in the form of like traumas, that are also pulling down. Like almost like no matter how much you succeed, you still have this feeling of like not really. And so it's an interesting, it's a double-edged sword, double-edged or two-sided problem to be solved. It's like you need things to push you towards the direction you want to go, but you need to also get rid of things that are pulling you back. Especially for
Mm-hmm.
men nowadays, I think that the T word is such a hot topic for guys in particular to be talking about. It's like, oh, it's my trauma. Oh, my dad didn't hug me enough. Whoop de doo. Not realizing that actually is a big fucking deal. It turns out, like, for your development in psychology as a child, your parents being around can actually have an impact on you. That there are ways to deal with it and actually alleviate it in the present and address it and change it. But acknowledging it is the first step.
Men have so much trauma, it's not even funny. From other men, from women, from social pressures. Men have so many burdens placed on them, and there's not enough safe spaces and safe other men and women for these men to learn how to navigate this. I have a client whose mom and dad were so emotionally and mentally abusive to him, and anyone would look at him and be like, oh, they didn't hit you, stop being a little bitch. It's like, okay, that was still a child. Regardless of the fact that he had something dangling in between his legs, that was still a child. So you're going to tell me that because the child is a boy, even though he's the same age as a girl and developmentally speaking, the circumstances of your biology are very similar at that point until you start going through puberty, that he was just supposed to toughen up when he's 6 years old and his parents are abusing him and neglecting him. How does that make sense? It doesn't, but these narratives are just perpetuating over and over again, and men are not allowed to talk about it. They are now more than ever, and it's wonderful. But men have trauma too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, men needed to be hugged too because we are sentient beings. You just because you're a man doesn't mean you can gaslight yourself into believing you don't have emotions. It's not true. You have them too. You've just been convinced you're not supposed to.
Yeah, and I think there's a what we've lost. What's interesting, if you read any of was Iron John, Robert Bly,
Mm-mm.
he was a pretty prominent figure in like the men's movement in the 70s and 80s, poet and whatnot. But the him and a couple other books, there's some good books out there regarding to men's work and men's issues. Is like historically throughout all of most civilized history, there was something of a natural rites of initiation, almost like an entry to manhood. Like you're a boy, now you're a man. And the idea was for women, the demarcation was mainly around menstruation. Like now you're literally capable of carrying life. That's a pretty fucking big deal compared to what you could do before. Granted, you're
Right.
still gonna have other things to do, but men, they're really, if we kind of figured out a long time ago, it's like, if you don't, I wouldn't say that we're not toughen up, but like show men what they're capable of, they'll just stay in that infantile state psychologically. And so there was a realization of like you almost need to do what we refer to as like a necessary wounding. But usually what it went through is like, this is going to suck. You're going to go out into like the woods by yourself and fight a tiger with your bare hands, whatever the hell people were doing. And even today's day and age, you see like the bar mitzvah, the confirmation, whatever it may be. Um, Something challenging that you're going to go through in order to show you what you're capable of. And then when you're done with it, we're going to like applaud you and cheer you and love you and welcome to back to the group. Nowadays, it's like you're going to go through difficult shit and no one's going to give you any credit for it. That's the part
100%.
that really sucks for a lot of men. It's like, I'm enduring this for what? And it's not like I need a cookie afterwards necessarily, or some kind of like participation trophy of like, I survived my trials of manhood, whatever, fourth place. But the idea being, yeah, if we're going to have men go through difficult shit, there is something of a carrot on a stick. There's something of like a need to appreciate what they're going through. And a lot of men just don't have space to feel appreciated, whether than relationships or even for other men. Because to other men, it's like, oh man, I went through this tough shit. Oh, you went through tough shit with parents. You see this with like when I was your age, and it's like, yeah, but times are different, and the kids are different, and the world's very different. And the idea is like being able to go to like a young boy is like, I was crying, like saying whatever it may be, that yeah, this is going to be tough. You're going to go through a hard time, but we're going to be here right beside you as you go through it. And you're going to do this for yourself, and you're going to take that experience, and it's going to get ingrained in your hippocampus in the back of your head, and just like lodge in memories. So in the future, when you go through more difficult shit, you're going to know, oh, I've done that before. And in the past, when did it, there was somebody there next to me along the way.
Right. I'm going to be loved. I'm going to be taken care of. I am going to have belonging. Okay, I'm willing to go do challenges. I'm willing to engage in competition, healthy competition. There's
Mm-hmm.
there's destructive competition and there's healthy competition. I can go engage in healthy competition. I can challenge myself to grow because I know I have a secure and stable base. But men aren't being given that because from a very young age they're being taught toughen up. It's like he's 3 years old. How is he going to toughen up? Toughen up to what? Give him love, give him nurturing, let him know that his body is sacred and that he matters. And he'll be the manliest man ever because he knows that he's safe within himself.
Yeah,
That's a real healthy masculine. Most
absolutely.
of the men that are puffer fishing are the most insecure men ever, and they have muscles the size of freaking rocks because they don't feel safe inside.
Yeah, that's a big one, is like guys not feeling safe in their own skin. Women too in certain circumstances, but for the sake of the podcast, yeah, men. It's a tough one to get them to understand that your behavior sometimes is a reflection of the fact that your own body is dangerous to you, to that part of you that's still living in the back of your head, like because you're living in there in the back of your head with demons of you that are still taking up their roommates that shouldn't be there anymore. And your behavior can sometimes be a reflection of that. It could be, if you're, I just found out about it the other day, and this is not really exactly the men's stuff, but it's interesting how it ties into it, that there's a strong correlation, strong-ish correlation to people who have bariatric surgery, gastric bypass surgery, and high suicide rates. And the idea
Really?
being higher than average suicide rates. And the idea being that when you constrained their stomach, they can't eat as much, they can't use food as much. Can't use food
As a
as
coping
much as a coping
mechanism.
mechanism. So men using coping mechanisms like, oh, I just like to do weed, and I just like to drink, and I just like to eat junk food, and I like to play video games. And it's like, at what point was this recreationally fun for entertainment purposes? And at what point is it you just running from something because you don't know how to deal with it?
I haven't seen any studies on this. I haven't looked, but I would bet money on the fact that there is a correlation between this. Men are not taught from a young age that their bodies are meant to be protected and are sacred and are safe. So little boys end up being treated more aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
Little boys end up being in very violent and aggressive sports. Little boys from their mothers and their fathers and uncles and brothers and cousins and whoever are subjected to a lot of violence from a very young age. And there is studies and data to support the fact that that is one of the leading causes of why men are more likely to complete suicide, because there's three things that have to be true in order for someone to complete suicide. Number one, there's this perceived sense of burdensomeness.
Mm-hmm.
So I am a bother to other people. Number two is this lack of like work, a lack of an autonomous sense of self that like you deeply matter. And number three, you've been desensitized to physical harm. So you've over time had a lot of exposure to a lot of harm and harmful circumstances. So you basically built up your tolerance to be hurt. Men are hurt from a very young age. You're in aggressive sports, you fall down. Yeah, it's fine, toughen up. You're in these aggressive situations. You're playing rough sports. You break a bone. Oh, it's fine. Nobody cares. Just like rub some dirt in it. And then, of course, when you're older, you're more likely to seek out more aggressive and lethal means
Mm.
because your body was never something that you were taught how to keep safe and protected. Women are more likely to engage in self harm, like
Yeah.
cutting. Men are more likely to drink and drive or to get a gun
Mm.
or to, instigate a fight that could lead him severely damaged and harmed.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with the boys being more physically outgoing and whatnot, that there is a component, I think, where there is a benefit for
Mm-hmm.
young boy. My cat is trying to step on my computer. Hold on. Okay. Young boys needing, on average, more physical activity, more physically, like pushing, pulling, but then the idea within that is like when a disruption happens, when a connection breaks because you hit them too hard, or you broke something, or you knocked the kid out, or crazy, whatever it may be. The idea being like, can you repair that within yourself and within the person you're with, and then from there, and that's what you see people applauding. And like there was it was like an MMA fight. I forget who exactly what it was, and it was a guy that he just, I don't know if he kicked him or punched him. He knocked the guy out, whatever it was, and it was like a bad punch or a bad kick, whatever it was, and immediately this guy just, like, you could see, like, he went like, "Oh my god, holy crap! I think I might have just done something terrible to this guy, and I feel terrible." He literally ran up to the guy while the medics were there, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And everyone was like, "That is such a beautiful example of like sportsmanship," because like you're kind of going in there to try to kind of sort of kill each other, but then afterwards be able to say like, "Good job, hug it out." Like I said, healthy competition. And I think what we're seeing more and more now is, yeah, this generational reflection of competition with no restraints, competition with like, it's never enough, it's never good enough. And even you see these stories of parents who are trying to live vicariously, fathers trying to live vicariously through their sons about like, getting them into sports and activities and things. Like, why wasn't able to hit into the NBA? Maybe you can. And what was it, Michael Jackson, for example? I think how crazy abusive his father was towards him, as just a reflection of him just wanted him to be successful rather than just him letting him be who he was going to be, and how psychologically messed up he ended up being. So,
Or women raising their sons to take the role of the father that they never
oof,
had.
good God, that's a whole other 2 hour podcast. Yeah.
There's a lot of really complex nuances. This isn't just men versus men and women versus
Yes.
women
Yeah.
and whatever. This is a very dynamic and complicated issue that we're facing as a society in general. And like I said, and this will be, you know, I'll die on this hill. This is only going to stop when each one of us as individuals take the concerted effort to evolve, when we can
Mm,
develop mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial, social, economic intelligence, when we become empowered as individuals, we'll stop needing each other to be something that we're not. And
mm.
we'll actually feel safe enough to be vulnerable and loving and nurturing to each other so we can be fully expressed human beings, so that men can be men and women can be women, and there's not all of these very destructive ideas about who we're supposed to be. Like, we can just be who we are.
Yeah, it's a lot of generational baggage that's being handed down and just live for a very long time now. This has been awesome, though. Thank you so much for your time. Where can we find your content, your information, your website?
So I'm on all of the social media platforms. Evolve with Bianca. We have the podcast Evolve Ventures. You can find us at evolveventurestech.com, and you can reach me on any one of those platforms.
Beautiful. Bianca, thank you so much for the conversation. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.